All right, welcome to the Ravat Show. I'm super excited today because we're going to talk about something very interesting, and it is definitely talk of the town. Recently, I've been to a few conferences talk about Gartner, Nvidia, but I've heard about it a lot, and that is around AI LLMs. But today specifically, I'm focusing a little around the topic of AI observability and LLM observability, and I'm super excited to have leaders in the space joining us today, and it's none other than the co-founders of TruEra, Will Uppington, who's the CEO of TruEra, and Anupam Datta, who's the president and chief scientist at TruEra. I'm super excited to bring them up here on the Ravid Show, and we'll be discussing a lot around AI observability, LLM observability, and much more. Anupam, Will, welcome to the Ravat Show. It's such a pleasure to have you both. I'm super excited and definitely looking forward to learning more about the tongue twister, AI observability, and LLM observability. Guys, first of all, welcome to the Robert Show, and I would love to learn a little about yourself and what you're doing at TruEra. Would you like to start with an introduction? Maybe, Will, you can go first.
Great. Thanks so much, Robert, for having us. Really appreciate it. So hi, I'm Will Uppington. I'm the CEO, co-founder of TruEra. I've been working in tech startups for 20 years. This is the fourth startup that I've been a part of, and fortunate to have been with a lot of successful ones. And I've been working in machine learning AI for the past 10 plus years.
Nice.
And I first started doing that at my last startup, a company called Bloomreach. So looking forward to the show, and thanks for having me.
Awesome. Anupam?
Hi, I'm Anupam Datta. I'm co-founder, president, and chief scientist at TruEra. And before starting the company, I was a professor at Carnegie Mellon University in computer science and electrical and computer engineering for over a decade. And what got me really excited about this area initially started from looking at questions of ensuring that artificial intelligence systems are effective and trustworthy. And some of the work we started back at CMU was the technical foundation on which we started the company. So great to be here and looking forward to the conversation.
Such great experiences. I'm honored to have you both, and I'm definitely looking forward to get into learning more about AI observability, LLM observability. I've been hearing about it from TruEra, and but to start with, obviously, what inspired the creation of TruEra, and what is the company's vision for the future of AI and machine learning? Anupam, do you want to take it first?
Yeah, starting to get into that now almost 10 years ago. At that time, I was a professor at CMU, and with Shayak Sen, who's our co-founder as well, not on the show today, who was a PhD student at that time, and a number of other folks at CMU, I started looking into the questions of evaluation of machine learning models, including traditional machine learning, deep learning, and how we can evaluate, debug, improve these kinds of models along a number of different dimensions, explainability being a core set of capabilities to enable that. And towards the middle of 2017, I started getting a number of inbound interest from larger enterprises, especially in financial services, around whether the papers that we were writing was their software and tooling around it. And then spent a year with Shayak exploring the market, getting a bit of a sense of where the market needs are. 2017 was too early for evaluation, monitoring, observability to be a standalone company. But towards the end of 2018, it started maturing enough, and there was pull from certain verticals on tech, financial services, and so on. And that's when we started thinking about starting the company. And then we were fortunate to be introduced to Will, who was experiencing some of the same problems. And then we came together and started operating the company in middle of 2019. So we're getting to our 5-year anniversary. It's been a good ride.
Been a journey, looks like. So, Will, would you like to share something?
Yeah, and my background is in product management, and I was at my last company, Bloomreach, and I was introducing machine learning technologies into our product line back then, which was around e-commerce software. So how to provide more relevant search results, recommendations, those kinds of problems. And I found it really hard to build consistently good machine learning models across all of our customers because all of our customers' data was different. Found it really hard to explain how the models were working as we were providing tools to people that had done some of these things manually before, and they were trying to understand what was different about models, what was driving the results. And then third was how to maintain that performance over time. We were running part of the site, the search, and it was really hard to consistently maintain good performance. We got a lot of issues that happened, and how and the difficulty of like debugging those issues. And I saw Brad Anupam and Shayek's paper on explainability, and I said, this is the core, the keystone to providing answers to these kinds of questions. And that's what motivated me here. And in addition, we've had a core belief around trying to help people, ensure kind of effective and trustworthy AI, to make sure that AI is being used for good as opposed to being used for not so good things, which it can increasingly be as well. So that's a core mission of the company that we all really believe in.
Love the vision.
And I think the second part of your question, Ravit, is on the future of AI and machine learning. And over these past few years, what we have seen is the evolution and emergence of generative AI, right? Which has where there's just tremendous opportunity and potential.
Right.
And at the same time, some of the same set of questions that Will and I were talking about, ensuring that we guard against hallucinations, that these kinds of applications work as intended, that they don't cause harm, that we address the safety issues proactively, and ensure that these applications deliver accurate results and business value. That is one of the biggest challenges that is blocking the enterprise-wide adoption of generative AI. Last year, as you know, was the year of experimentation. Right. Enterprises spent huge amounts of effort in building out, prototyping applications, hundreds of applications, and now the attention has shifted towards productionizing them. 2024 is going to be the year of taking these early experimentation prototypes from the lab into production. And in that context, the questions of how confident are we in the quality of the results that these applications are producing? Are we guarding against hallucinations? Are we guarding against toxicity and bias and the safety risks to ensure that these applications are trustworthy? Is there security and governance in place? Those are some of the big challenges that are going to make or break AI in the enterprise. And those are the kinds of things that with AI observability, you can proactively handle and address and enable that movement, if you will, from experimentation to production. That's what I'm excited about.
Yeah, no, 100%. I was actually talking to an enterprise leader just last month in New York. And, this enterprise is a huge enterprise in terms of, the market share that they have. And he had similar thoughts in terms of 2024 being an enterprise AI driven tech for at least the enterprises out there. And there's been a lot of development that's already happening. So I can't wait to see. Thanks for sharing that, Anupam. And just just on this itself, I had something like, I'm pretty sure our audience would also love to know a little about the TruEra platform and how it aids businesses in managing the AI models. Maybe Will, do you want to take that one?
Yeah, absolutely. So there are kind of three main areas of the TruEra product, and we're used in two kind of phases during the development life cycle. So the first is during the development phase itself, and the second is when you move models into production. So the three main areas that we cover are, first, evaluation and testing. This is especially used during that development phase. So with predictive AI, this is around being able to run automated tests, have deep explainability, responsible AI capabilities. For instance, banks use it to do model risk management, in addition to developers using it to just improve their models and identify problems with their models. The second main area is in monitoring. So when you move models into production or add generative AI applications into production, how do you go and monitor these models? So we have the ability to, on the predictive side, monitor inputs, outputs, before the key performance metrics, which differ by each particular type of application or model. And then on the generative side, similar to what we do in development, where we have deep capabilities around evaluations of quality, being able to prevent hallucinations, a lot of the things that Anupam was just mentioning in terms of our mission, and also experiment tracking. On the monitoring side, the question becomes, how do you scale those evaluations so that they're low cost and they are being cost effective when you want to use them in production. In addition, a lot of these evaluations can also be used in guardrail mode. So how do you make sure that they're low latency as well as cost effective, so they can be used in guardrail mode? And then the third piece is debugging and root cause analysis. So on the predictive side, we have some very unique capabilities around how to debug common problems like that you may see into production, like declining performance. We also have very unique capabilities around debugging during development, such as overfitting, bias, etc. And another unique aspect of what we do is we can do this both overall, but also at a segment level. So you can take an important business segment. Let's say you've got a churn model and you really care about your most profitable users in your telecom company. Then we can really look into the performance of the model just for those specific higher profitable users or business segment. And then with generative side, there's a lot of ability to debugging is really dependent on how granular your LLM app evals are. So we have a rich set of granular and comprehensive evaluations that make it easy to understand where the problem may be in, so let's say a RAG-based architecture. So those are kind of the main components: evaluation and testing, monitoring, debugging, and root cause analysis, and that's both used during development and then also during production. And then I think you also, the question is kind of how does this aid in businesses and kind of managing that? What's the benefit?
Exactly.
So there's three main benefits. First is being able to proactively improve your app performance. So we see a lot of people implementing a number of different their LLM application a number of different ways, and this enables you to find problems in that, compare your different applications or use of LLMs, and enable you to hone in and proactively improve the performance of your AI application, and similarly with machine learning models. And the second piece is preventing failures. So in traditional machine learning models, those are classic things like drift, for example, or the declining accuracy. In LLMs, this is a big issue because when you're developing an LLM application, it's pretty impossible to identify all the potential problems prior to move it in production. But when you move it into production, you're going to get new prompts or inputs that you've never anticipated. And thus there's going to be hallucinations that you've not anticipated, potential toxicity issues, or governance kind of issues that you may not have anticipated. We've got some good examples we can share of those. And so being able to monitor those and then debug them is key. And then the third area, so first is proactive improvement, second is preventing failures, and the third area is really improving data scientist and developer efficiency. We have developers building LLM apps where giving them experiment tracking and evaluations allow them to take something that was taking 2 weeks and make it an hour. And then on the machine learning side, a lot of that is sometimes you need improving developer efficiency, but also other people that may need to review the model. And then clearly in debugging, you can do things like take a debugging exercise that may take days and turn that into minutes.
Okay, this is great information. Well, from obviously talking about the solutions, from evaluating, monitoring, debugging, but also about how you connect it to businesses as well. So thanks for sharing that. I have another question actually for Anupam as well. So Anupam, I've been hearing a lot about LLM observability from TruEra, and can you tell us a little more about LLM observability and also elaborate on what this is, how it's crucial for AI application? It would be interesting for our audience.
Yeah, sure. And maybe before I kind of say too much about LLM observability, maybe I'll give you an anecdote of what we are seeing work with users and customers. So we did a big launch a few weeks ago of our LLM observability offering, the latest upgrade. And in that launch, one of the customer stories that we have publicly now is with Equinix. Equinix, as you know, is a big data center digital infrastructure company. And Ravi Pasula, who's their head of AI, has been working with me and the team on leveraging some of the TruEra offerings in their internal LLM application development and evaluation lifecycle. And one of the things his team discovered, and they have been building a number of applications for summarization using large language models, question answering with these RAG-based architectures. These are across enterprises. These are some of the most popular applications. And what they have observed is that using some of the kinds of tooling we have, they were able to improve their application metrics by up to 50%. And this evaluation and iteration cycle time, which used to take them 2 weeks, is now down to 2 hours, which means that if you think about the development teams here, they are building these question answering systems, they're building chatbots. Many enterprises have hundreds of these applications that they're experimenting with. It takes a lot of resources to support, and it takes a lot of effort to go from the first version of the application to a version that's ready to be moved into production. In that process, the developers are testing, and much like software gets tested and debugged, these applications are getting tested and debugged to get them to a level of quality that they're ready to move to production. And it's that crucial part of the life cycle where, by leveraging TruEra's capabilities, they were able to get up to 50% improvement in metrics and get this kind of productivity gain where it used to take them 2 weeks, now takes them 2 hours. And in practice, developers will often have to make like 20 iterations on their apps before they're at the sufficient level of quality. So that now comes down from months to days, which is a huge, huge improvement.
For sure.
And then the other piece that I'll like now taking a step back to answer your question more directly, and Will started getting into it, so I don't want to repeat too much of what he said. In the application development life cycle, you start off by building a first version of the app in some app development framework like LangChain or Llama Index or just custom Python. And then right after that comes, in that development phase, comes the TruEra tooling to debug, evaluate, debug, improve the application, and then the monitoring module once it moves into production. And in production, if there's a problem, there's a feedback cycle that brings the developer back to the debugging stage to improve applications that production applications that are starting to degrade because of various reasons. So that's where it fits in the life cycle. The other piece that I'll leave our readers with, our audience here with, is what are these metrics even? Like, how do you measure metrics for a chatbot or a summarization, a question answering? It's quite a different question from more traditional machine learning. Traditionally, machine learning has been used for tasks like classification, right? So based on signals, the model is trying to decide, is this transaction fraudulent or not? It's a binary classifier. Or looking at an image, it's trying to classify, is this a cat or a dog or some other class? So these are the kinds of tasks that historically machine learning has been used for. Classification tasks or regression, like scoring tasks. What's the risk score associated with the transaction, or the FICO score associated with credit worthiness of an individual? Generative AI is just completely a different kind of beast.
Right.
Now you are asking a question, you're getting back an answer. It's not a yes, no kind of measurement, right? So last year we introduced this notion, this concept of the RAG triad. RAG is retrieval augmented generation, where instead of, and I'm sure many of your audience know about RAGs, if you just use a language model to answer questions, then one big challenge is that it makes stuff up and it hallucinates, right? So we asked Claude, Anthropic's Claude 2 chatbot, who are the founders of TruEra. It came back with a response. It had my name and then two other real people who are not the co-founders. Will doesn't like that example. In Claude 3, it was a step improvement. Now it has my name and Shayek's name. Will still isn't on it. Claude 4 is when they'll get to Will, is our bet. But it has a person who is like Will, who has industry experience, very credible person with operating experience, who fits those general characteristics. So large language models learn these general trends, and it generates. That's what they're meant to be. They're generative models. They generate stuff, but the stuff they generate may not be based in facts, right? And so because LLMs have this problem, people have started using them in conjunction with knowledge bases, which are usually in vector databases, where you put in the facts. So if it's an enterprise that wants a question answering system, then they're not directly just asking an LLM, like Morgan Stanley, for example. This is a public use case where Morgan Stanley set up a question answering system for their financial advisors, right? And the way they did it was they took an LLM from OpenAI, and then they took a vector database, and they took 100,000 of their financial analyst reports, chunked them up into little pieces, and put them into the embedding, converted them into embeddings, put them into the vector database. Now, when the user comes and asks a question, let's say their financial advisor is asking the system, what is the house view on NVIDIA stock? Then the response, the way it works is that it's not directly going to the LLM. It's retrieving the most relevant documents from the vector database, which are these analyst reports. And those are shared with the LLM, which then does the summarization, right?
Yeah.
So the nice thing about this architecture is that at least there is trusted facts in the database. And LLM is used more for summarization and embedding generation, more general tasks, not to answer questions directly. Now, in this kind of setting, there still can be failures. For example, in that summarization step, the LLM can still make stuff up. Even if you tell it, here are the 5 documents that are relevant, create a summary from these 5 documents, the LLM can still add additional things in the final summary. So we introduced this notion of a RAG triad, which has 3 evaluations. It checks for relevance of the retrieved documents and the final answer, and it checks for groundedness in that intermediate step to ensure that every statement in the summary is backed up by facts from the knowledge base. So in the Morgan Stanley example, from those research analyst reports that are relevant, right? And by providing that traceability or lack thereof, if, say, there's a sentence that was made up, let's say it made up a sentence that, NVIDIA's earnings are X, whereas in reality it was Y. And so it's not backed up by the evidence. And then the groundedness evaluation can surface that. So that really helps to guard against hallucinations.
Nice.
And surfaces exactly in a very pinpointed fashion where the problems are happening or where you have high confidence in the results. So it becomes a very crucial tool. Assessments of relevance, assessments of groundedness, and then also assessments of various kinds of harms like bias, toxicity, and so on. Some of the adversarial attacks through prompt injection and so on gives you a comprehensive set of evaluations to build confidence, discover failure modes, address them, and on an ongoing basis, monitor as well, and build confidence.
I love it, Anupam. Great examples there. Definitely kind of clarifies things for me in terms of LLM observability. And Will, I'm happy even if you're not mentioned there, but you're on my show. So so you're here, and
thank you for getting me some more visibility, so that the LLMs will
pick you up,
include me, pick me up.
They'll be feeding LLMs more with Will's name. So Will, quick question in terms of, that brings me to something which is very interesting, is around, the AI quality management. Do you have something to share about, how significant, what are the most significant challenges companies face in AI quality management?
Yeah, and I think I'll just focus a little bit on generative to build on what Anupam said. Was we actually did a survey of this, and a couple of different surveys, and I think the this goes back to a little bit about what you and Anupam were talking about before, which is like the big problem right now for most enterprises is how can I take these LLM applications that are in internal prototypes or internal POCs and move them into production. And so our survey showed that 70% of people don't have any LLM apps into production, and they have these rosters of lots of people throughout their organizations are trying to build these LLM apps, but only less than 10% of them have moved 25% of those into production. So it's both a number of companies that don't have anything, but then even people that have some in production, they have way more that are not yet in production. And when you ask them, what are the biggest what are the pain points that are preventing you from getting into production? 70% of them say that the number one pain point is this quality and hallucination. So how do you make sure that the application you're going to show to these users is consistently meeting whatever bar you set for quality? Right. And that's a challenge in and of itself of setting that bar. But that's what people are finding is in these internal POCs, these problems or these quality issues or hallucinations or some of the things that Anupam was talking about are coming up. So that's number one. The second closely was 60% talking about governance. So with a lot of enterprises, they're saying that the teams are getting a huge pressure to get apps into production, but then they're also saying the board is and the executive team is saying, but make sure you don't really mess anything up. So make sure that these applications are not going to be toxic. They're not going to have bias. That we have to have some kind of guardrails to make sure we don't have some reputational disaster from having these. Or in many cases, there's regulations that apply. You can't give advice in medical applications or in financial services applications. So there's regulations that are also relevant. And the third piece is, and I think this is one that's going to increase, is cost. So 40% of people cited cost as an issue. There are others around how do you optimize and latency, but those were the top three, kind of quality, governance, and cost. And I think cost is both, when you've got these internal POCs, your aggregate cost is fairly low. Your variable cost may be pretty high on a per LLM request, for example.
Yeah.
But it's not that big of a deal because you don't have a ton of users. But once you move it in production, you potentially have a lot of users. People are going to stop doing the math and saying, this doesn't scale. And that's also the case for evaluations, because a lot of the technology used for evaluations right now are using LLMs themselves. And if you want to evaluate, 5 different aspects of your application in production, and you are going to use LLMs for that, then you're actually potentially making 5 requests to LLMs for evaluation purposes versus 1 or 2 maybe to actually serve your application. And it, on the face doesn't make sense for people to have 5x their costs for their application evaluation versus serving. And that's where a lot of the work we're doing to create scalable, low latency and low cost evaluations really is targeted at solving those specific problems. So that's the main thing we see: quality, governance, and cost.
Okay, this is very interesting. I'm kind of curious also to know about which industries have benefited from most of your products, and if you can share any success stories with our audience, because it kind of connects the dots in. But yeah, just wanting to understand a little about the industries and how they're benefiting.
Yeah. So I'll maybe give an overview and mention something on the predictive side, and then Anupam, I think, would be great to. He's shared a little bit on the generative side already, and can highlight that. So our product is horizontal. We work with a lot of different industries. We've seen a special success in financial services, technology companies, retailers, and enterprise overall. One really good example is AES. So AES is a company that it's a Fortune 500 utility and power generation company. And something that's really cool about them is that they operate over 32 gigawatts of power plants, but greater than 45% of those are renewable. And their data science team has a number of different things they do on the predictive or traditional ML side. One is forecasting their output from their wind and solar renewable generation assets. Second is on kind of wind turbine predictive maintenance. And third is around some of the utilities. So that could be arrears prediction or vegetation management. And back to the value that we were providing, it was really about helping them to proactively increase business value and then also prevent common AI failures as they're moving some of these models into production. So one example on the proactive side was in their forecast models, we helped them identify that their models were performing poorly during off-peak periods. So in all energy markets, you have peak when most people are using the power, and then you have off-peak, and the forecast accuracy was much higher during the on-peak and much lower during the off-peak. And we were able to identify some of the key root causes of doing that and allowing them to improve that off-peak performance. Similarly, if you have an issue with how to prevent failures, they were having a situation where they were doing regular retraining, but sometimes that was not necessary. So you can actually move to a more informed retraining based on the actual monitoring of your production, and then being able to do the data drift debugging. It was especially as you saw, there would be seasonal pattern changes, or there would be weather events that would occur and reduce the accuracy. And then we were able to help them, debug those much faster in a way that they really couldn't do before. So that was, some examples of that proactive improvement of their models, and then also preventing some of those failures. Anupam, maybe share kind of the generative AI example as well.
Yeah. I think that was a good overview. Financial services, just to reiterate a bit on what Will was saying, banking and insurance, we are working with some of the biggest banks and insurance companies in the US, UK, and Europe. And they started off working with us on the predictive side a few years ago with models for fraud and credit and wealth management and insurance-related use cases and so on, auto insurance and so on. But each and every one of them now are transitioning and asking us about how do we extend similar capabilities to the world of LLMs and generative AI. And what we are seeing with them is summarization use cases, internal question answering. Those are some of the big use cases. There is some amount of hesitation to bring in customer-facing chatbots just yet. There's more sensitivity there in the regulated areas, although there are some exceptions. But in that context, a lot of the evaluation, debugging, governance, monitoring elements that we talked about earlier are very relevant. And then I already gave you the example of Equinix. That's a big tech company, and they're seeing very significant gains in productivity and the quality of their applications and just streamlining their tech stack. One kind of general observation that I'll make here, and then maybe I'll hand it back to you to move on to another topic, is many of these larger enterprises are now in the process of putting together a best-of-breed generative AI tech stack by pulling together building blocks, right? So do we get our LLMs from, right? So initially, a lot of people started with just OpenAI.
Right.
Over time, there is both consolidation with some of the cloud providers. Many of the larger enterprises that have gone multi-cloud, they're observing that for certain kinds of use cases, Azure OpenAI works well, and for others, it's AWS Bedrock or Google Vertex. Then there's vector databases. There's, again, a lot of choice on which vector database to use. And even observability is an important part of this tech stack. So putting together that best-of-breed tech stack is an activity that we are seeing a number of enterprises go through just at the moment. And then also the best practices around building and maintaining these applications so that they can be done at scale and it can be opened up, not just to machine learning teams. And this is one big difference, Robert, that you may have observed in your other conversations. Before the generative AI wave, machine learning was confined to data scientists and ML engineers. Now, the promise is that any software developer can start building effective applications pretty quickly. And that opens up the impact of this field, increases the potential impact of this field by orders of magnitude. And setting up this best-of-breed tech stack and the best practices around building and maintaining applications, Gen AI applications, is one way in which enterprises are going through that activity with the intention of opening it up to software developers and not just keeping it confined to the ML people and data scientists.
Yeah, very right. We are in that interesting, I think, times where things are changing rapidly, but it's happening for good. And first of all, thanks for sharing all the use cases, success stories. One of the most biggest challenges when I kind of go out there and ask a lot of vendors or even enterprise leaders, the thing that they mention is we don't hear about the experiences, but this will definitely help them to understand about the implementation and also a little about the success that these enterprises are seeing. And definitely feel free, guys, whoever wants to reach out to Anupam and Will, y'all can do it on LinkedIn and reach out to them. We'll ask them about that towards the end of the show. But also very quick question around, I'm because the space is evolving so quickly. How does TruEra's approach to predictive AI and ML observability differ from traditional methods? Maybe Will, do you want to share something on that?
Yeah, I think I'd highlight three main ways. So one is, based on all the research background of our team from Anupam and Shayak, I think a lot of startups in the space are really taking existing methods or methods that are known in some way, and they're putting them together. And the main value proposition to many customers is, you could probably build some of this together, but we've already done it for you, so you don't have to. Well, we have that value proposition, but in addition, because of the unique research that we've developed some unique IP. So in particular, in predictive side, we have explainability capabilities that are faster, more accurate than SHAP, and we have the ability to analyze models not just at a global level but at a segment level, and that is really, really insightful. So much of the value people see is by, you can identify a lot of the low-hanging fruit from overall accuracy, for example, but being able to analyze it at a segment level really identifies new areas to improve your model. And in particular, our root cause analysis, this is something that nobody else has. Most people basically give you stats for how to, help you, give you all the data to debug a problem yourself. We actually literally give you the answer. We say, these are the features that are contributing in this amount to this performance decline, to this overfitting, to the extent of overfitting, to bias. We can automatically identify higher error segments, for example. So that's one. It's just kind of this unique debugging evaluation capability. And this is on predictive. And then for both predictive and generative, we have some really great technology around scalable monitoring and debugging. So how can you, monitor streaming models at massive scale as well as batch monitors? How can you debug your generative AI app at scale, identify those issues, and then hone in on the particular problems and the reasons for those problems? And then the third area is what we hear from enterprises is there's a big focus on solving these generative AI evaluation and observability problems, quality, governance, cost. But most people also have predictive models. And the fact that we have a comprehensive platform, cloud-based SaaS that can work also in VPCs for both predictive and generative is something that's unique. There's a number of generative AI observability startups that just do generative. But enterprises really want to minimize their vendors. They want to do more with a particular vendor, and they want a solution for both generative and predictive from the same vendor. And that's something that we have that a lot of the kind of new startups, we're never going to have and certainly don't have. And that's something that's really attractive to enterprises.
Okay, this is fantastic.
And then, I think on the generative side, maybe Anupam, you could, I don't know if that was the way you were going, Robert, but
I just wanted to, learn a little about the Gen AI as well.
Unique things.
But
on the Gen AI side, I mean, I'll be quick. I'll just bookmark a few things and folks point them to some resources. I already talked about the RAG triad, which is a set of evaluations for RAGs, which we introduced last year. I highly recommend a course on deeplearning.ai that I did with Jerry Liu and Andrew Ng. It's called Building and Evaluating Advanced RAG Applications. That covers the RAG triad and more. And that would be it's a short 1 hour open free course that lots of folks have taken now, tens of thousands of people, and have gotten very good positive reactions and feedback. So that's one. And then the second piece is around these more granular evaluations, which is related to this topic. Instead of just looking at prompts and responses, being able to log the entire execution trace, look at intermediate results and spans of traces, that gives us lots of power. And then finally, what I'll leave you with is when you move from evaluation and development to production monitoring, it's just important to be able to manage cost and latency. And for that, we have done a lot of work with custom smaller models that provide 20x better results in terms of 20x faster, around 20x lower cost as well. And that means that, in particular, that the latency is on the order of tens of milliseconds instead of the order of seconds. And therefore, these evaluations can be done in real time and can be the basis of guardrails. So if you get a hallucinatory response for an application or a toxic response, then that can be detected in real time and blocked, for example, before it gets in front of the user. So there's just a lot of benefits from it.
So Anupam, I have like a curious question just to follow up on this itself. How do you look at the trustworthy AI and the importance of this? Because in the real time, obviously, a lot of things happen. But then, why is why is trustworthy AI important? And how does TruEra ensure AI systems are reliable and ethical at the same time?
Yeah. So it touches on some of the same themes that we have talked about. We want our AI systems to be accurate. We want them to be
Right.
fair. We want them to not be toxic. We want to be able to guard against adversarial attacks, where things like prompt injection attacks, at least the known ones, should be detected and acted on appropriately. So a lot of the conversation today, we have used other terms to describe evaluation, monitoring, observability,
Right.
and so on. Um, but trustworthy AI is also an umbrella term that people use to refer to
Exactly.
artificial intelligence systems that are accurate, that are on point, where you guard against hallucinations, where you guard against a lot of the other dimensions of societal harm that can come from AI through fairness issues, through toxicity entering into the conversation, and so on. So
And
that's
maybe I can just jump in here, is
Yeah.
because I would say, you know, for generative AI, trustworthiness also really relates to user adoption. And this has been something in AI forever, which is that, if users first try your new generative AI application and they get kind of spotty quality, what can happen is they can lose trust in the quality of that application and stop
True.
using it. And
True.
that's one of the things we see in a lot of some of the people that put apps into production very early, is they're actually struggling with user adoption for this
Mm.
very reason. And it's really important that quality, trustworthiness, adoption are really connected, and that comes back to being able to doing a couple of things. One is, for an enterprise application, doing your quality testing before you move into production, so you can try to head off as many issues before people hit them. But then when they hit them, there's two things you can do. One is, people have this tendency to focus on the problems, and they
Mm.
can say, hey, I found this problem where your app hallucinated. It was really didn't make any sense at all. But if you can show them, like, well, yeah, there are always going to be these issues, but we've done some comprehensive testing, and we show that these issues only occur 2% of the time. And so, yes, you
Mm.
found one, and we'll work on that. But if you can show the bigger picture because you've done comprehensive testing, then that can lead to greater trust, and a notion that, yeah, some of these bad examples are exceptions versus the norm. And the third piece is being able to solve those problems and then show that you are fixing them. We know that in every software has bugs, right?
True.
And people know that that's going to occur, and generative AI is no different. But we've all learned that you can work through those bugs with your customers if you show that you're fixing them and addressing them on a consistent basis. And that's where the monitoring and debugging, is really critical to doing that. So we believe that the capabilities around evaluation observability are critical to addressing, creating this trustworthiness, which is linked to kind of the quality issue, and getting users to consistently adopt and like your application.
Love it. I love the approach where it's more around the side where you kind of give them the opportunity to try, use if there are errors, address them, solve that, and obviously win the game. So that makes a lot of sense. So, well, Anupam, quickly on that itself, I talk to a lot of enterprise leaders as well, and the thing that they usually ask me, and I'm kind of also wanting to understand from TruEra's point of view, that how do you integrate with existing AI stacks and infrastructure? Do you want to share something around that? Maybe Anupam.
yeah, sure, yeah. Um, we have built our stack in a way that's very general, extensible. It's very API driven. SDKs and APIs and a very central part of the architecture, which makes it very easy to plug and play across. So the way we think about it is that there is the hardware layer, then there is compute, there's storage, and then there's compute. And then the observability layer is on top. And we have architected our observability layer in a way that we can plug and play across different choices of compute and storage. And we can swap things out. So if you think about our generative AI product offering, then we are evaluating LLM applications or generative AI applications, but how you build those applications, we are agnostic to. So people can build with many different frameworks, LangChain, Llama Index, various Python frameworks, and so on. We'll work across all of them. We are agnostic to which LLM they're using in their application. Do they want to use OpenAI, or do they want to use Google Gemini, or do they want to use AWS Bedrock, or the open source ones from Llama V2 and Mistral and so on? All of those are from our point of view, it's just an API call. So you can swap out the LLMs, you can swap out the vector databases, you can swap out other pieces of your building blocks. And from our point of view, the evaluations will work seamlessly, the monitoring will work seamlessly. So that has been a very first principle design requirement for us to make it easy to integrate across various choices of the tech stack.
Yeah, this is fantastic and gives a lot of options to the enterprise leaders as well out there. So it's awesome. I know we've seen so much. We all have seen so much of progress in AI in the last 2 to 3 years. And there are so many enterprise leaders, but not only just that, there are so many entrepreneurs who have kind of come out and, have been building companies. So I would like to ask you both about what advice would you give to aspiring entrepreneurs looking to enter the AI and machine learning field? Are there any thoughts that could help them? Because you guys are in the game for the last 5 years, and I'm pretty sure your insights would be definitely very helpful for them. Well,
yeah, I think the number one thing, it's all about product market fit. And the number one thing as you're thinking about building something that has product market fit is focus on a really important problem, one that's going to, in a relatively short order, have some level of urgency to fix. I think that's totally the case with some of these problems in generative AI we've talked about. And then it's how can you bring something different and integrate well with the ecosystem so you can be easy to use. And those kind of differentiation and then ease of integration and use, I think, are kind of critical to saying, how can I build something that will sustainably be able to solve those kinds of problems? And finally, the third thing I would say is just, it's about getting started, learning and iterating. Anything you've thought of ahead of time, as you get into the problem space, is going to change. And the key is, as things change, how fast can you move and iterate to take advantage of those changes and not have those changes hurt you. So that kind of adaptation, because things you didn't anticipate are 100% going to happen in any entrepreneurial journey, and it really is about how well you adapt to those.
Fantastic. Anupam?
Yeah, so what I would add is it's very important from my point of view to have a sense of purpose, a sense of mission about this is why we are doing this and why it's have that and bring people on who share that sense of purpose and mission with you. For me personally, for example, it was almost, I felt like it was thrust upon me rather than me making a choice, that this felt like the one thing, the most important thing I could do with my life at that stage when I started the company. And that feeling hasn't gone away, that AI is going to become extremely big. It's going to get embedded into the fabric of our society in a very, very significant way. And if it's not done right with the right kind of guardrails, we will not see value from it. And in turn, it'll actually cause harm. And that was like the biggest motivator for why this felt like the thing to focus on. And there's a lot of people in our company at TruEra who share that sentiment. And that has bound us together through highs and lows. I mean, Jensen Huang said this in one of his interviews, that if people were to ask him, would he start NVIDIA at this point, if he had a choice, he would have said no, because it's just so hard of a journey, right? And this is Jensen Huang. So I think that's the thing to think about as the number one most important thing. The second thing I'll say, and that'll be my last thought for this session, is the technology and the research around it in the artificial intelligence space is moving at a tremendous pace right now. And so if you are going to build in this area, then you have to be able to move extremely fast and figure out what is it that you bring to the table that separates you from the herd. So for me and our team, one of the things which I think has worked really well recently, at least since the generative wave happened, AI wave happened over the past year and a half, is that we realized that building an open source speaks to our strengths. It lets us iterate really fast, get user feedback. We are on track to hit 100,000 downloads this quarter. We are growing 2 to 3x a month over month right now in terms of downloads. And that user feedback coming in at this rapid clip has been immensely informative for what to build into the product that gets to a product that is useful to customers. And on that note, also what I've found very helpful is bringing a bit of that culture from CMU, the university culture of research and education, has spoken really well. Because with research, we talked about it quite a bit. A lot of the technical innovations and differentiators in the product have come from our team, who have been able to do that. And then with education, this is just such a fast-moving field that the hunger for education is extremely, extremely high. And so having technical educational content, which is courses and webinars and workshops and notebooks, and that's been immensely effective for us. And so that's something that sets up a product-led growth approach where it's much more inbound. People come to our open source project, come to our events, then explore the product. And now when we're going to enterprises, in every other meeting, there is someone who has already played with our open source project or taken a course or gone to a workshop. And that, I feel, is extremely powerful and something to consider. It depends, of course, on whether you are, what kind of product you're building for, but for the kind of space we are operating in, that's incredibly valuable.
Fantastic. I love these insights. We'll obviously focused on more on the focusing more on the important problems and obviously bring something different for sure. Anupam, get started, learn, iterate, and congrats on obviously building such a huge community for yourself, where folks are really using it and actually implementing it in business, and there are so many success stories. I know we're towards the end. It is always I can go on for another hour, to be honest. You guys have such great insights about the enterprise world, about the startup world, and about the LLM AI observability. But one last question I have for our audience is, I'm pretty sure they might have more questions. They might have certain certain industries they are in, and might have questions around it. So if they want to reach out to you, which is the best place? Is it LinkedIn, email, anything? So Will, where can they reach out to you?
Yeah, I'm just will@truera.com, LinkedIn as well.
Okay.
And also, I think there's a lot of great resources on our website, TruEra.com. And I think Anupam will be good to speak to some of the, it's just been amazing to see, Anupam and our team leveraging his background and the team's background to provide a number of educational resources as well.
Love it.
And so I think Anupam can share those in addition to his how to get in touch with him.
Yes.
Yeah. I'm also Anupam at TruEra.com, easy to remember, and LinkedIn works. And yeah, in terms of educational courses and such, I've shared a little bit earlier, but as a final reminder, building and evaluating advanced RAG applications is on deeplearning.ai. It's a 1-hour short course. It's a nice way to get introduced to the area. And also TrueLens is our open source project. Anyone can go and pip install it, and we have a nice GitHub page, lots of documentation. The best way to learn is to play with the products. So,
Fantastic. Yes, definitely. Love it. Well, Anupam, thank you once again for visiting the Ravit Show. It is such a pleasure to chat with both of you, and I can't wait for the next time for sure already. So looking forward to many more insights. I'll definitely share the website link with our audience for them to go out and learn more about TruEra, and they can take up some courses, resources. So super excited, guys. But I'm pretty sure I'll see you around online. Thank you once again, and thanks to our audience.
Yeah, thank you, Ravit, and thanks to everybody who's listened. Really appreciate it, and would love to reach out and hear some of the things you're working on. We're working on some project, probably working on some of the similar problems with a bunch of other customers, and so comparing and contrasting what we're hearing and the latest and greatest of how to solve the problems you're facing. We'd love to help you out.
yeah,
Awesome.
thank you so
This
much.
is great.